Have you ever seen the Darren Aronofsky film Noah, the big budget film about Noah's Ark? He couldn't get that financed. And eventually what he did was he got someone to turn it into a graphic novel. So the studio could kind of see what it might look like.
Which is crazy because you'd think the Bible is like the original graphic novel.
It is. And also,
Hello, Internet. You're listening to the In Your House comedy podcast with the Babyface and his fellow funny friend. Now hold on to your butts. Keep your arms and legs inside the podcast at all times. Prepare to have an autographical orgasm in 3, 2, 1.
It's actually working for once. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the In Your House comedian podcast. I am stand-up comedian Kd Hinken, and I am joined, as always, by one of my fellow funny friends from around the comedy circuit. Please welcome Mr. Aidan McCaffery. How are you doing, dude?
Hello, KD. Thanks for letting me join your podcast. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's absolutely fine, my man. Always happy to chat poop.
Excellent stuff. I'm admiring your background. Hulk, is that Hulk versus Hulkbuster?
Oh, yeah, that is indeed.
Is that one of those like wooden prints that you get?
Yeah, this is one of the better canvases I've got, to be fair.
I've got a similar one, but mine's it's Kirk versus Gorn from Star Trek.
Okay.
Yeah. They're quite fun, aren't they?
I've got quite a few different ones of them now. A few different canvases. So tell everyone anyway what kind of stuff you're into in general, man. What kind of comedy stuff you got going on as well, you know.
Sure. So I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm from Yorkshire. I've been gigging in London for the past 2 or 3 years, but as of I basically moved back to Yorkshire in March, just before lockdown started, and I got a car. So I was looking forward to finally being one of those comedians who could get professional gigs by promising better comedians lifts to the middle of nowhere. That was my plan.
Yeah.
Get into the comedy circuit with a driving license. That was my route in. But as soon as I moved up here, the lockdown happened. So now I've done 1 gig in 7 months, which is something as another comedian I'm sure you can relate to.
Yeah, very much. It has been, especially like over the last couple of months, been on most of the year, any now one we're on about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The 1 gig I did was pretty solid though. So it was a nice little sort of confidence boost, even though once, like pretty much a week or 2 after they announced the second lockdown. So I had to resign myself to the fact that this gig wasn't going to be the start of a new wave of gigs. It was actually going to be this island in the year of 1 gig. On either side of this island would be 2 oceans of nothing. No gigs at all. But
you know what? I completely understand what you mean there, because I pretty much had the exact same thing at the exact same time. Yeah.
So I mean, in London, because I have a lot of friends on Facebook who are London comedians, it did seem there was this spate in summer of London gigs happening, whether it be on rooftops or in sparse bars, sparsely seated bars. But I don't know. I mean, where are you based, KD?
I'm Birmingham to West Midlands. I think
okay. So I'm based in Leeds, and I don't know if your experience. It seems like it's pretty sparse in terms of what's happening. There's professional gigs happening, but if you're sort of not quite at a professional level yet, the massive dearth of like open mic new material stuff. Whereas in London, it seems like both got going again.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah. To be fair, like over like the pandemic and stuff, it's gone completely, like you said, like all of them. Apart from like the only one that's still going that I know of is the Hollybush. Have you ever been to that?
No, but because I'm new up here, I'm not massively au fait with the Northern Circuit.
Oh yeah, the Hollybush is like a great one to go to, and they've actually been going, keeping going through everything. But yeah, you're right. Like most of them have just kind of disappeared at the moment. But I think you kind of have to, and it's like a weird time at the moment. Haven't really got a choice.
I'm not saying they're making the wrong decision. It's just sort of sad from a former perspective that you can't do it. But I started, as I'm sure many people did, I used the lockdown to start a podcast. And that's been interesting. You asked me what my interests are. I was trying to figure out what to do a podcast about, and I'm interested in politics and I'm interested in movies. And I picked movies because I figured it would be a more fun thing to do a podcast about, because politics, I find it can be hard in the modern age to be funny about politics, because you have to get through a wall of brutal depression before you can get to funny. Although having said that, talking about films, it presents its own challenge, because I found that I'm trying to do a comedy podcast about movies as the theatrical going movie experience is collapsing around us. So that's become a challenge on its own.
Yeah. I think, what I've been doing mainly, like me, myself, I've been trying to do podcasts and stuff, like you said, like everyone's been doing podcasts. But not focusing too much on the comedy. We're funny people. We can't help it. The comedy comes natural. That'll come on its own,
Yeah, it's a funny one. I mean, the other thing about doing a podcast now is I did a podcast about 7 years ago, and it was a radio sitcom that I just produced in my friend's bedroom. But we managed to get it we managed to get it to a professional standard with a cast of like proper actors.
Yeah, like a scripted thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we managed to get that in the iTunes top 20 plus the iTunes top 10 comedy podcasts. And and that was just from 6 episodes. What's interesting about doing a podcast now is back then, 2013, doing a podcast still felt like something of a novelty. Like you could say to someone, I do a podcast. And they'd like light up like, oh, you do a podcast. And it almost sounded like you were Simon Mayo or something because you had a podcast. Whereas now, because every fucker and their dog has a podcast.
Especially now,
Yeah, it's so hard to get anyone to listen, because it's like, no, seriously, mine's quite good. And it's like, yeah, you and everyone else's podcast, mate. It's very difficult.
Yeah, it's all about like trying to make them stand out, isn't it? Make them different.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean, like, because I started this podcast, the In Your House podcast, before, like, about a year ago now, something like that.
Nice.
But and I felt like then everyone had a podcast, So even more so now, But it's just about coming up with some random new ideas, ain't it?
Yeah, I've tried to do it's a film podcast. It's ostensibly me reading the film news of that week, like who's being cast in what films have been announced, what's happening in the MCU, that kind of thing. But I sort of really am just using that as a springboard to talk about my random thoughts on life and everything. And in that sense, sometimes it does get political, because you can, if something political is happening in Hollywood, like, I don't know, the Academy Awards have tried to diversify their rules, that can be a springboard to talk about race and, I don't know, woke culture and all that kind of stuff. And I find it's quite good for that. And because it's just the film news of that week, I don't really know what I'm going to talk about. It's just like what's happening in film. And then you can either use that film or the actor in it or the plot of the film as a sort of springboard to just talk about irreverent nonsense.
Yeah. To be honest, you bring up a good point, though, because, I mean, the media very much, like, kind of... obviously, it spreads news and that, but at the same time, like, the media kind of, like, spreads, like... I don't know how to put it. Like, I was trying to make this point earlier with... and it's not the same at all, but with Coronation Street.
Yeah.
Like, they cover, like, important stories, things that need to be looked at, like storylines that need to be looked at and that. And because they cover them, like, it kind of makes it normal and be able to discuss it, and the films kind of do the same thing.
Yeah. What are you saying? Are you saying that soaps can be a sort of mass market normalizer of subjects?
That was put much better than what I said, but yes.
No, but you raise a good point. It's like if, say, like if your gay character if you have a gay wedding on a soap opera, it to me feels like a sign that you're there now. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's accepting. If Coronation Street has gay characters on, then your mum and your aunt and your gran are probably going to be okay with gay people.
Which is pretty much what happened like 10, 15 years ago or something, probably.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I'm not a great watcher of soaps because I find the they stretch the plots out too thin. But that's probably just because I'm an elite metropolitan snob who just likes to watch Darren Aronofsky films. But I do think there is a worth in it. Like, I don't know. I remember when I was young and Mark Fowler gets AIDS on EastEnders, and suddenly that's the way the masses can sort of digest what AIDS is.
Oh yeah, thought about that one.
Well, I'm just riffing on what you've said.
Yeah.
Mark Fowler getting AIDS in the late 90s feels like, at the time, it felt like that was coming quite a long time after AIDS was announced. You look back on it now, and it's like, well, that's only like 10 years after it became a big thing. So, maybe.
And for ages, they didn't understand it anyway, did they? Like, it's something they didn't get for ages.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you can't digest it. It's like, have you ever seen that Eddie Murphy thing when he's talking about AIDS in 1983?
I feel like I have, but what was it again?
I mean, basically, AIDS was discovered in like 83-ish, right? In 83, in Eddie Murphy's stand-up special that he released that year, and I can't remember if it was Delirious or Raw.
Yeah,
he makes these really homophobic jokes about how he doesn't want to go near gay people because they have AIDS. It's really shocking to watch, but also it's like, wow, he was really right out the gate on that issue. Did you know what I mean? It's just like,
yeah.
If there's a controversial issue in the air, my feeling is always, I'm going to leave this for a bit because I want to see where it lands, and I want to see where. I haven't figured out what I feel about it immediately. Whereas Murphy doesn't give a shit. He's just straight out the gate on it. And obviously, he then has to apologize for it 2 decades later.
You know what? I suppose it's just because back then the internet wasn't a thing, was it? So, well, obviously it wasn't a thing, you know what I mean? So they just saw it as like a smaller thing. But now, obviously, like you said, stuff you did like 40 years ago, you have to apologize for now.
Yeah.
But, So I was going to say something. Completely out of my mind. That's what I was going to say.
Soap operas, AIDS, Eddie Murphy, we're all over the place.
Yeah. I've lived with women all my life, so for me, I've watched the soaps like all my life, man.
It is very much like, it's very much like there's certain corners of culture that I'm only exposed to when I'm at my mum's house. So like. Anything like Strictly Come Dancing, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, Coronation Street.
That's good though.
I mean, because now these days you can just be in your own site, like information entertainment silo, and it's interesting going back to my mum's house because it's like, oh, I get to watch I'm a Celebrity and see what that's all about. Because otherwise, I just would have no idea whatsoever.
It's the difference. Like it does make a big difference, like watching channels rather than watching stuff on demand. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but it is very different.
Yeah,
like it feels different as well. Like when you're watching stuff on the channel, it's like you're getting this flow of stuff coming to you, and you can get stuff you want and don't want and that. But when you're on demand, it's like you're picking everything and all that, like on Netflix.
I worry. I was discussing this with
more indulgent.
Yeah, I was discussing this with my wife yesterday because I worry that we are almost too much. The streaming age allows you to sort of be a control freak about what you ingest culturally.
Yeah.
Because you can be like, I pretty much only watch things that have either been recommended to me or like a sort of critically acclaimed. Like I have to have it on some kind of authority. It might be good. And yet,
some reason why you got to watch it first.
Yeah, but back in the day, if you just like have 5 TV channels or 20 TV channels or whatever, you do a lot of flicking through the channels. So you discover random stuff. And I was saying, like, now, like, I would never now consciously choose to watch the TV show Deadliest Catch. Have you ever seen Deadliest Catch?
I haven't watched it, but I know what you mean. Isn't that fishing?
But back in the day, before streaming, I'd just catch that. And then I'd be, like, suddenly absorbed into a world of Alaskan fishermen. And it's amazing. Like, it's just like, these guys are insane. Whereas now, I wouldn't watch it because it's not in the sort of cultural sphere of stuff that I would choose to accept. So maybe some nights I do just need to pick up the remote and flick through the channels until I find some random shit that I never, ever would have watched otherwise.
No, that's a good point. I never thought of it like that either, like, because it's just a case of you could be missing out on things as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I could see that as being something that will die out though very soon. Well, I say soon, like soon in the grand scheme, like, like 10, 15 years, channels, just in general, just kind of dying out. Maybe not 10, 15 years, maybe a bit longer than that.
It's interesting. I mean, I think there will always be event television as long as there's always things that, excuse me, as long as there's always things that everybody likes. So like Stranger Things is an example, or actually maybe The Mandalorian is a better example because that's on TV right now. When The Mandalorian new episode comes out, everyone's very excited. Really, Star Wars. Yeah. When Stranger Thing or The Crown comes back, it becomes a talking point. So you still have event television, but yeah, you don't have. It's not scheduled quite as much. But ultimately, like I think people still rush to watch it immediately because no one wants to have it spoiled for themselves. Like I watched the Bake Off final live on TV last week because I knew if I didn't, then I would potentially have it spoiled for me on Facebook. So I was like, I've got to watch the Bake Off final tonight.
Yeah. No, I was watching that as well. I know what you mean. But you know what's shocking though? I actually waited. When did I wait till? I waited till Wednesday night, I think it was. Or might have even been Thursday to watch it.
You mad?
Yeah, I know. I watched it with my mum. That's why I was waiting for a time, for both of us to watch it.
Mate, you are taking unnecessary gambles with your life if you're waiting 2 days to watch the Bake Off finale. Wow.
Tell me about it. I know. It's just how I like to live my life, though.
I play it safe. I'm not a maverick. I'm not a rule breaker. I've got to play it as safe as possible. You're too dangerous, man. You're too dangerous for me.
It's the only thing that I can do instead of taking heroin. But no, but shockingly, it didn't get ruined for me.
Are you saying that as a former heroin addict or someone who doesn't do drugs at all?
Oh, but not a heroin addict at all.
Oh,
but yeah, a bud addict. I don't know if you say addict for a bud, but
Pardon?
I don't know if you could say addict for a bud, but
Oh, bud. Well, as long as
it's just cutting out a little bit as well.
I think the definition of addict is if you're lying about how much you take. So I think that's the definition.
Is it? I don't know. I can't see how that would be the definition of an addict.
Well, I don't know. I just heard it because I once said to someone, I think I'm addicted to chips. And they said, when someone asks you if you've had chips, do you lie? And I said, no. They said, you're not addicted to chips.
I can see that being a definite symptom.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not a medical expert. I'm probably just talking shit.
That's all we ever do, my man.
Nice.
Did you know? Are you into Conan OBrien at all, like the talk show hosts and stuff?
Am I into who?
Conan OBrien.
Oh, yeah, I know who he is. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, did you know he's because he's been in doing his late show now in some iteration anyway, for 28 years now, and it's finally coming to an end. I just saw this the other day.
Yeah, hasn't he got some? Am I right in thinking he struck some deal with a streaming giant to present a show for them?
I hadn't heard that, but that would make sense. I heard that he's got some daytime show coming out.
Well, end of an era, I guess. That lines up, frees up a space for some UK James Corden-esque celebrity to take his space. I guess.
I'm not a big fan of James Corden,
I'm not either, but it's not because I think he's not talented. It's because I think he is talented, and I think he squanders his talent.
Okay, yeah, I can understand that.
I think he's a good actor. He's a good performer. I didn't see him in Two Men. I saw Two Men, One Governor, but not with him in it. And people I know who saw it raved about him in it. And I think he's a good comedy writer and he's a good comedy actor. But his primary interest in life is to hang out with celebrities. And it isn't.
Apparently, yeah.
It skewed his career totally. That's why he took this job, interviewing celebrities in America. And what annoys me about him is when he does skits, the skits are always like, how amazing is this celebrity? So if you think about that carpool karaoke thing he does, it's not funny, it's not comedy. The whole thing is, you're amazing, let's sing one of your songs.
Yeah,
he did this other one where he's like, I saw him act out all of Tom Hanks's films with Tom Hanks. And it's like, so this isn't comedy, you're just going, I love all your films, Tom Hanks. He's very sycophantic. That's what I like about him.
Yeah, just playing up to them, brown nosing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's very good at that, though. But it is surprising, when you watch Gavin and Stacey and that. And I remember, I think it was after Gavin and Stacey. Did you ever see Lesbian Vampire Killers?
I didn't see it, but I know of it with him and Matt Horner.
Yeah, that was probably my favourite thing. That was great. That was for all the wrong reasons.
I'll have to take your word for it. I've never seen it.
I highly recommend it, my friend.
Nice.
But yeah, I didn't expect him to go down the Late Show kind of route. That was quite surprising, to be fair.
But like I say, I didn't expect it either. But once he did, it sort of made total sense because he is a bit of a sycophantic guy. Even when he presented the Brit Awards, it was like he was like the opposite of Ricky Gervais. He was very much about let's pay respect to all these pop artists, like they'd all died or something. And they haven't died. You need to puncture the bubble of those award shows' pomposity, whereas he's like, no, he buys into it all. Anyway.
Oh yeah. No, but Ricky Gervais like makes a very good point about that all the time. Like, and Joe Rogan as well makes a good point about it. Like, just how celebrities always and film stars especially always feel the need to like bring up these things as if they should be the ones arguing them. I don't think it's so bad that they're bringing them up though at the same time, but
it's a weird one that I sort of defend them bringing it up a little bit in as far as I think politics is for everyone. So everyone in any job. I think people just get annoyed by celebrities because just by virtue of their fame, they have more of a mouthpiece for it. Like if Brad Pitt says something about politics, everyone will listen to it. He's no more qualified to talk about it than you or I. But then when people say, "Oh, he should just stick to acting," I just think, well, you know, you wouldn't say that to like a nurse. Hey, shut up, nurse lady. You stick to injections and leave the
can't have an opinion
to the real people. You know, you wouldn't say it about nurses. So
no, completely.
So what's your vibe? What are you interested in, Kd? Because I'm on your pod. We don't really know each other. This is a bit of a blind date podcast, isn't it?
Well, yeah. They're the what kind of ones I like, to be fair. But I like all the same kind of stuff, man. Like I saw that you're into your politics and your films and that. And I just like talking about all of that kind of stuff. Like I had someone on the other day that was it'd be last week or like 3 days ago when this comes out. I don't know. But
time is
he's in the Labour Party. Say that again, sorry.
Time is meaningless in podcast world.
It is because editing exists. I'm just very tired today, you know. I'm just not on it today. Usually I'm a lot more sharp, and now I'm just not on it today at all.
Nah, mate, it's all good. I'm enjoying it. So you were saying about politics. You were talking to some guy the other day about politics on a different episode.
Yeah, well, he's just involved in politics in general. He does something in Labour. I don't actually know. I was just thinking about it. I don't actually know what it is in Labour he does, but he does something in Labour.
Well, as in you interviewed him for an hour on your podcast, and by the end of the podcast, you still had no idea what he did.
2 hours.
2 hours. I mean, I can relate. I've got best friends, and you know, I always dread they're going to ask me what they do for a living because I'm like, I don't know what they do for. I've known them for years, and I can never grasp what their actual job is.
Yeah. What kind of like films and that mainly are you into then? Because I know you said you love your films and stuff, and I'm very much a cinemaphile. I'm the kind of person that will go to the cinema on his own at like 11 on the night to watch a film, or 1 minute past midnight to watch Avengers.
No, you see this. So I think we're in the same boat. I'm very much a IMAX 1 minute past 12 for a big event person. So I'm pretty sure I did that for Avengers Endgame. I definitely did it for all 3 of the last Star Wars films. In fact, all 4. Oh. I think all of the last few Star Wars films, except Solo, I actually queued up at midnight and watched an IMAX screening.
Yeah. What was your preferred out of like the Avengers series, for example, or the new Star Wars series?
This is a very interesting question. It's very hard not to say Avengers because it feels like whether the film, it's not like they're all amazing, but it feels like Kevin Feige knows where he's going with that franchise. So you feel like the odd film like Ant-Man and the Wasp that isn't great, but it feels like it fits into the overall thing. Whereas with the last few Star Wars films,
can feel the one narrative going through it still. Yeah.
With the last few Star Wars films, it hasn't really felt like they've known where they're going at all. And I think people have lost faith in it. I think if you'd stack up the first 5 new Star Wars films, Force Awakens onwards, against the first 5 Marvel films, they're not that much different in quality. You know what I mean? There's some duds in those early Marvel ones, like the Incredible Hulk. Iron Man 2 isn't great. I'm not a massive Captain America First Avenger fan, but again,
I'm not. I agree with that.
But he was moving the blocks into place for that first Avengers film, and then they knocked it out the park. So again, yeah, it's like maybe on a film for film basis, they're not that much different, but it did feel like they knew where they were going in a way they don't with these new Star Wars films. And I really liked some of the new Star Wars films and defended them quite a lot. But by the time it got to Rise of Skywalker, it was like, they didn't really have a plan for this, did they?
Yeah. If I was talking about this recently, if I remember correctly, wasn't it to do with J.J. Abrams did Force Awakens, and then Ryan Johnson took over for what was it, Last Jedi, wasn't it? And then J.J. Abrams tried to salvage it for Rise of Skywalker. It was everything that I enjoyed in Force Awakens kind of got messed up by Ryan Johnson in Last Jedi, I felt.
Well, I really liked The Last Jedi. I quite liked how it dismantled the franchise in a way. And yeah, I mean, it was quite bold. It was like people don't like the prequels, but it was sort of calling back to the prequels in some ways by talking about how the Jedi, with the height of their power, just totally fucked it up and allowed Darth Vader. I quite like the way it sort of dismantled the franchise in that way. But I think it was teeing up a finale that they just couldn't really deliver. Like Endgame, they've been putting those blocks in place in terms of the Infinity Gauntlet for like 10 years. And it paid off promotion really well. Whereas it felt like by the time they got to Rise of Skywalker, they didn't really have any of their ideas then. Let's bring back the Emperor out of some misguided sense of fan service. And it's like, I don't know. I want to see. I always say in my podcast, the Movie News Podanza, feel free to download it if you're listening to this. I always say, I don't mind endless reboots, but I would like people to do something new within it. If Hollywood insists on just rebooting the same franchises over and over again, then at least tell an original story within that universe. Because one of the problems with Hollywood right now is no one's quite got the balls to say, let's give $300 million to a filmmaker to tell a totally original story. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you've got to hope that somehow they'll incorporate that into the Avengers universe or into the DC universe or into the Star Wars universe or the Star Trek universe or whatever universe it is they're rebooting at that point.
Yeah. Could that be from what you were saying as well from a moment ago? Like, you could say that like a lot of the audience has lost faith like in a lot of the filmmakers. So could it come from, the fact that they need something, a basis there first, like a comic book, for example, to go from? Have any faith in this?
Well, have you ever seen the Darren Aronofsky film Noah, the big budget film about Noah's Ark?
Yeah, with Russell Crowe.
Yeah, he couldn't get that financed, and eventually, what he did was he got someone to turn it into a graphic novel. So the studio kind of see what it might look like. And then all of a sudden you're not going, we're making a $100 million art house Noah film. Suddenly it's like, we're adapting this graphic novel into a thing and it's got a basis in something.
Which is crazy because you'd think the Bible is like the original graphic novel.
It is. And also in the 1950s, the films that had people queuing on the block were biblical epics. Stuff like Ben-Hur. There's a film called The Robe, which is, by inflationary terms, one of the top 10 grossing films of all time. Have you ever fucking heard of The Robe?
Is that a Alfred Hitchcock film?
No, that's Robe. I'm talking about The Robe, as in a robe that you wear.
Oh, no, never.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it either. This was like one of the biggest films ever when it came out, because everyone in the 50s would just queue up to see any biblical epic that mentioned Jesus at some point. Whereas now, unless it's Mel Gibson flogging Christ on the cross, no one gives a shit.
That surprises me because, you're saying that. Was that in England as well, though?
I don't know about England box office, but certainly in America with that Bible Belt.
That's what
Ben-Hur, all of those films are huge.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking because it surprised me, to think that, in England, that the religion would be that big still in the 50s.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the superhero thing, it'll be interesting to see when the superhero craze dies. when the director Matthew Vaughn was making X-Men First Class, which I think came in out about 2011. This is the one with the first one that had James McAvoy and Michael
sounds
Fassbender.
about right. I really liked that one. That was actually one of the ones I really quite liked.
It was good fun. He said, "Oh, the superhero bubble's going to burst soon," because he said by that point it felt like there was loads of superhero films coming out back in the day.
There was.
Yeah, back in the day, you know, you'd have Batman films for a few years, then they'd die out, and you'd have Superman films for a few years, and then they'd die out. By the time you got to 2011, you had Iron Man was out, Thor was out, Captain America was coming out. There was a few X-Men films out, and Matthew Vaughn said, "This is going to burst this bubble." 1 year later, the Avengers came out and became one of the biggest films ever made, and since then, it's shown absolutely no sign of abating. Like I know the DC films underperform commercially, but they still take a lot of money. And then you've got all these other side films like Shazam and what's that one with Tom Hardy where he's like the super Venom. Those films are massive.
Well, Shazam's DC as well, though.
Yeah, but it's weird. Like they're just not going anywhere. And I'm not criticizing them. I like these films. I'm just saying, you thought the bubble would have burst by now, and at some point it has to, because at some point, as with any cultural craze, people are going to go, "I'm sick of this now. Can I have something new?" But it doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. And even a slightly average, not amazing superhero films like Spider-Man: Far From Home and Captain Marvel, even those films are taking $1 billion. So people are fucking lapping it up.
It is more the brand now as well, to be fair. And I think Marvel has got to the point now where it's like, this is never going to, well, it would take a lot. This has never been done before, this kind of cinema thing where it's been like a series, like a proper narrative through, like you said, like 10 years of film. It's never been done before. And I'll be surprised if it gets done again.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's a soap opera, isn't it?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
It's basically Coronation Street, except you don't have to go to your mum's house to watch it.
But it's built up enough faith now, though, that until it messes up, then I can see why the bubble wouldn't burst till then. But yeah, like you said, it's got to burst at some point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. I mean, as I say, Feige seems to know what he's doing, so you know, we can only continue to watch. I tip my hat to him totally. Like, he's not like I'm not entirely sure if they're reinventing the wheel cinematically beyond just the idea that you have the characters bleed into each other. But you know, he's tried something fairly new in terms of the way you experience cinema storytelling, and people seem very excited about it. I mean, my podcast is a movie. It's a news podcast, and one of the announcements that you get a lot is stuff like, "Oh, Doctor Strange is going to be in Spider-Man 3. Oh, Star-Lord is going to be in Guardians 3." And that excites people. They just love seeing their favorite heroes pop up in someone else's film. It really blows their mind.
It's just Marvel in general as well. Marvel is just very popular. Like, it's just built up such a thing now.
Yeah, it really has. I remember when I was 10, I was at the cinema, and this advert came on, and it said Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then it said Sylvester Stallone, and then it said Bruce Willis, and my 10-year-old head exploded, and I went, "What? This is going to be the best film ever." And it turned out it was an advertisement for Sky Movies. I felt really cheated as a kid. Whereas now it's like, you know, I watched the first Avengers film I saw when I must have been, 26 or 27 or something. And I thought, oh, this is interesting that they're doing this. But if you were like 12, like imagine what that must have been like. Just it would have blown your tiny brain out of your ears.
No, completely. Yeah, I mean, my kids have only ever known a world with Avengers.
Yeah.
And they freaking love it as well.
Oh, you mentioned your kids. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
So my wife and I are trying for a kid now. I have a very deep paranoia about how having kids will affect my creativity or the time that I put into it. As someone who is both a creative and a father, how do you manage that challenge?
You just got to find your way of doing it. Like, you know what I mean? Obviously, for a while, it's going to take a while of just focusing like for the first couple of months saying it, you know, because probably little babies are hard work.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but then it's just finding your rhythm, man. That's all it is. Just find your way to do it.
I remember hearing Tom York, the singer from Radiohead, say, being a parent just sort of makes you less indulgent of your own time. So he said, rather than when you're 25 and he's trying to write a song, he can just stay up till 3 a.m. bashing at a piano or a guitar until he's figured it out.
Yeah.
Whereas it just makes your decision making faster, because if you can only write songs from 9 till 5, it makes you reach the decision quicker than you otherwise would have.
But at the same time, you could take what he was saying as well, like use your time more wisely, for example, in the sense that you have more motivation to do the things that you are doing, you know.
Yeah.
Like you want to use that time because you've always got a purpose, you know. So you've got a reason to do it, which is one great thing about it.
I think I'm just very selfish with my time. So the idea that I have a kid, to me, although I look forward to the challenges and joys of parenting, it also fills me with dread. Like, but how am I going to watch 6 films a week, do 4 gigs, record a podcast, and then edit 2 promotional videos? And realistically, I know, well, I won't be able to do all those things. Something will have to give. But it makes me unhappy that I have to give anything up ever.
Yeah. Just include the kid, it'll be fine. Just use them as they're free actors. It's fine.
Well, I was thinking, because I do my podcast and I record it with my video phone, then I edit a promotional video. I could wear the baby like I'm in The Hangover.
There you go.
And then I can pass it off as a film reference. Oh, it's like The Hangover.
And just grow in the beard as well, because you were like a zombie at that point too. So that'll come at the time. And
also, like, I probably would have let myself go physically by then. So, you know, I'll just sort of become Zach Galifianakis over the next couple of years.
It would only be right to let yourself go, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I wish you would have looked with that though, man. It is a cool thing to be trying to do, though. Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
I got two boys.
Nice. How old are they?
9 and 6.
Oh, that's good. So they're kind of I imagine they're well into their fun conversational period.
Yeah, they're both little people.
Because I worry that if I have a baby, I won't be interested in it. Like, I don't think I have this paranoia that I won't care about my children until I can actually sit down and have a conversation with them.
It sounds funny to say, but that is a normal thing, because I've got a few mates that have got kids as well, and it's something I've said to them, and yeah, that's a normal thing. Guys have not evolved to get that natural emotional connection. We just haven't evolved like that, like the hunter-gatherers and all that, you know.
Yeah, because I think, you know, the maternal instinct is talked about, but like I'm probably going to be like, what's in this for me? This baby's giving me nothing conversationally. I'm bringing my conversational A game to this 6-month-old, and it's giving me nothing. Like
it'd be like getting a puppy.
Yeah, like doing a gig in front of a really non-responsive crowd. Like, come on, guys, you got to give me something. Give me someone to work with.
It's like doing an internet gig nowadays.
Do you know what? I've never done one.
I don't blame you. I haven't.
Have you done it? And what are they like?
No, I've done a panel show. That's all I've done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It sounds really bad, like I'm prejudging internet gigs. I'm sure there are some great ones, but
I mean, it's a fair thing to prejudge.
Well, yeah, with stand-up. I mean, I'm not like an expert or anything, but the best signs of progress that I've made in the 2 years I've been stand-up is by getting closer to realizing it's all about where the room is and trying to figure out that. And as a result, when online gigs came along, I just didn't really have any interest in it, because I was just like, well, I'm worried that if I did online gigs, it would set me back 2 years as a comedian. Because when I started being a comedian, I was very much about, here's my script and I'm going to read it to you. And if you watch early videos of me doing stand-up, it's like watching someone deliver a TED talk. It's very much about me hitting my marks. Whereas if
I can understand that. Yeah.
Whereas I feel like I've got to a point now where, I have all the jokes I want to make, but I will try and deal with awkward parts of the room. And I worry if I did these online gigs, I just go right back to where I was at the start, reading a script and not giving a shit about what the response was.
Yeah, you realise like that you need to hold some stuff back, so you've got some stuff to interact with the crowd with a little bit.
Yeah,
Or yeah. No, I understand that. That's one thing I've kind of noticed more now. Like one thing I tried to do recently, which like we said at the beginning, you know, the fact we both had that one gig that we thought was going to be the start of a new wave of gigs,
Yeah.
but it was actually the start of a new wave of Corona,
Yeah, exactly.
which none of us saw coming at all.
Well,
None of us saw a second wave coming.
Of course.
That wasn't obvious at all.
I did that one. I did a gig, and then 2 days after the gig, the guy who ran the gig, who I should add, had gone to great lengths to make this gig COVID safe for both the performers and the audience. He did such a good job.
Yeah,
But he messaged me 2 days after the gig to say, "Sorry guys, I've got coronavirus.
Oh.
So you're all going to self-isolate for a fortnight." And it's like, oh my God, one gig in 7 months. And I may have got COVID-19 from it. I didn't in the end, but a testament to how well organized it was.
Was he like the guy in the bar as well then?
Pardon?
Was he the guy on the bar as well?
No, he ran the gig and was the MC. He booked it.
Oh, okay, got you. Yeah.
You probably know. I don't want to mention his name, but I'm sure if you're a northern comedian, you will have gigged with him.
Okay, yeah. Let me know after then.
Oh, I could type it into the private chat of this if you want.
Oh yeah, go on. I always forget that's there, you know. But what was I saying a second ago? Yeah, but one thing I've tried to do with oh yeah, I think I know that name actually. Yeah, one thing I've tried to do though with my set at the moment is try to include having it based around like one topic.
Or the podcast or a gig.
Oh, a gig, my set, you know.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I think that's very wise. I mean, again, like you go back to my first gig, it's very much about me trying to stitch together lots of random bits. But apparently, you know, industry people do say that, you know, if you can just take one subject and riff on it for 5, 10, 20 minutes, it's a sign that you've really interrogated that subject for all the comedy gold you can mine from it.
Yeah.
So what's your comedy stuff about? What do you talk about on stage?
I talk about anything. I mean, the general like story that I go with through all of it is like just talking about my tiny tongue and my lisp. I use my lisp, you know, as the general things typing together. Oh yeah, tiny.
Wow. Is that like a medical thing or is it just slightly too small?
Well, it must be a medical thing. It's definitely a disability.
Oh no, I just mean I have small tiny hands like Donald Trump, but I can't quite claim it's a disability. It's just I have slightly small hands.
No, it's not like a proper thing that I know of anyway. I'm sure a lisp, to be fair, is a medical thing, but God knows anyway. No.
Hey, it hasn't held back Jonathan Ross, and it won't hold back you.
Oh no. It's a unique selling point, if anything.
Yes. Cool. My stuff tends to be about family. I have a slightly dysfunctional, a loving but dysfunctional family. And without going into too much detail, because some of it's quite dark, some dark stuff's happened in my family. So I sort of tend to talk about that on stage and make jokes about it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of dark humor as well.
Yeah. Or like sort of emotionally dark humor anyway. Like I don't want to be an edgelord, just talking about very dark stuff on stage. I quite like that. If you can present that in a funny and humorous way, I'm quite a big fan of it. I sort of in a weird way.
Yeah. You're on about covering like dark or strong topics rather than just saying like something dark or, you know, like a bit edgy just for the sake of saying it.
Yeah, like the difference between going, oh, I had a suicide in my family, let's talk about that. That, not like me going on stage and going, 9/11, lol. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
My friend, I do have a friend, my friend Nigel. I do have a friend. No, my friend Nigel, he often calls me a reformed edgelord because in private, I am the kind of dickhead who will say things to shock people. But on stage, I don't do it for some reason. I never have. And I don't know why. I think it's because I don't like comedians that do it, but I quite like it if you're in polite conversation to just suddenly say something to shock someone, just to sort of like upset the apple cart a little bit.
Yeah, that's your friend though, isn't it? Like I understand that. I think I'm quite similar, to be fair. And when you're on stage, you care more about what you're saying, like you think more about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't know, it sometimes feels like it would be too easy to do it on stage, whereas, I don't know, just saying something to shock a friend in a sort of dull conversation, especially if you know them really well, that can be
yeah. But that is also at the same time, though, something you might lean on if you were gonna like just throw something in randomly in the middle of the set, or react to something that someone says.
Yeah, maybe.
And then it's got a bit more punch as well if you're not relying on it during the kind of stuff. But yeah, you were talking about your stuff that you were including anyway. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the kind of thing I like to do. I did. I suppose another good thing about doing emotionally dark stuff is it's always interesting, the idea of getting everyone on side before you go there.
Yeah.
I had this idea when I did my first Edinburgh show that those dead. There's that thing in Edinburgh of doing dead dad stories where you do a stand-up routine about a loved one, and then right at the end of the show, you have this shock twist that they actually died.
To be honest, I've never been to Edinburgh. I've only been doing it 2 years. I haven't done the whole Edinburgh thing yet.
The comedian Russell Kane.
Okay.
Sorry, go on.
No. I mean, okay, that's just a weird thing to do. So yeah, please let me know.
Russell Kane did it really well in his 2011 show Smoke Screens and Castles, and he won the Perrier. And then since then, it's become this thing like, oh, comedians doing a dead dad show. That's original. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to just come straight out of the gate and reveal some really dark death that happened in your family, like a real one, like, because I have one in my family, and just saying that, and then seeing if you can claw the audience back. But I think I sort of made this.
Yeah, like giving yourself a challenge, or just going out and saying "fuck you all" and then doing it.
But I think I made this slight mistake of like, I do not have the skill to do that yet. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you see like an open mic comedian trying to do some meta Stuart Lee stuff, and it's like Stuart Lee will have learned to tell a joke before he started doing that meta stuff. You can't just dive in with the meta stuff. And I went to
anyway. It's okay.
I'll just make one more point. I went through this weird few months of like going around telling audiences that my brother had killed himself, and then launching into this string of really dark jokes about suicide. And it got such a mixed reaction. Like, it was just so, half the audience were laughing, and then half of them were just like, what on earth is this guy doing? And it was it was a really interesting lesson in the fact that you just because it's my story, I do have the right to tell those jokes, but it doesn't necessarily mean the audience are going to be totally on board with it straight away. So I sort of had to abandon that approach of just boom, come out with it and then launch straight into silly jokes, because it was a little bit too much. You do have to, you have to cast the fishing rod out and bring them in first before you start dropping those heavy bombs on them.
I can imagine that that would be something that would work quite well, like online. Because when you were saying that, like, I think I have that kind of sense. I know I have a dark sense of humor, so I appreciate like anything that kind of goes a bit further than you expect. Yeah. But a good thing about like you could do online stuff for example, I could imagine it would work quite well if you saw like a reaction of the people not laughing or their faces, because when you were talking about the people that didn't appreciate it, it made me laugh just thinking about their reactions.
Are you a bit of a masochist then? You like that reaction?
I suppose. I to be fair, I've had a few people say that to me, that I quite enjoy it, and I seem to quite enjoy it on stage when the audience don't seem to get what I'm saying.
Is that because of your tiny tongue?
Probably.
It is interesting, like, to what extent do you let go? Because ultimately, you can't have everyone like you, especially if you're, I mean, unless you're trying to be like a Michael Macken style comedian. If you're trying to create something with flavor or that's distinct, people are going to dislike you. I did a show at Edinburgh where two people walked out at a bit that I was doing that was a little bit of a high wire act. I was telling this story about how, and this is a true story, that I once had gastroenteritis, and I had to get on a plane, like a small plane, and fly across Europe. and on the plane there was 30 Orthodox Jewish couples. And when when the seatbelt light went off, all the men stood up and they moved into the central aisle and started.
Does that mean they're all dressed in it in like? Pardon? Oh wait! No! Hold on. Doesn't matter. I'm thinking of something else. So carry on.
All these Orthodox Jewish guys stood up and started chatting in the central aisle of the plane, and I had gastroenteritis. Like, I needed that runway. I needed that aisle to be clear at every single second in case I just suddenly had to go to the toilet. And I basically do this stand-up routine about how it's the closest in my life I've ever come to being anti-Semitic. And it's like a little bit of a high wire act. I'm sort of talking about racism, but I'm also trying to juxtapose that with a funny story about how I nearly shat myself 30,000 feet into the air. And once in one show, 2 guys walked out, and I really felt bad. I was like, "Oh no, guys, if you come back, you'll realize that it's going to be a happy ending. I'm not really a racist."
Were they walking out for that reason, do you think, though?
I've got no idea. I suspect, in retrospect, that they weren't liking the show anyway, and that was just the final straw. But I don't know.
At that time, though, it might have been, but that's not a bad thing anyway. Like, the fact if they got offended, I mean.
Yeah, but anyway, a friend who was watching said, you just have to keep doing your thing. Just totally ignore it. And it was really good advice, because it's like, I'm not going to judge whether that bit worked or not. I think it probably had about a 60% hit rate. And I don't think I'm a smart enough comedian yet to have figured out exactly what I was doing wrong with that bit. But she kind of was right. But you do have
everyone's kind of more critical. Everyone's their biggest self-critic anyway, aren't they? But it's good, like, especially with stand-up, to be fair, to try and switch that up. I can understand that, because you can only be a self-critic once it's done, and by then it's pointless. And you should just do your thing, and just not think about it. That's one thing I've learned as well, to just do your thing.
It's a very difficult thing, isn't it? Because you've got to stand up naturally. If no one's laughing, you are doing something wrong. So it's weird. You've got to figure out. I think.
If no one's laughing, But
then, at the same time, you're right. You have to do your own thing. And at what point do you? I know comedians who are almost too much doing their own thing, because it's like they almost don't seem to care what the audience thinks. They're not at a Stuart Lee level when they can manage that. And I don't know. I think my instincts as a young comedian is that I have to do a kind of comedy I like and try and get good at that. And I would only be truly selling out if I was trying to do comedy that I didn't like. I don't.
Yeah, I have that same kind of feeling, to be honest. Yeah. That's similar to how I feel. Yeah,
because I don't have anything against Michael McIntyre. I just never watch her. It's just not. I've just watched lots of alternative comedy. I don't know about him. If I tried to be like him, I'd be lying to myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I get the same thing with, like, just like we were saying earlier, just saying something for the shock value of it,
Yeah.
Because so many people get in, like, doing that kind of thing, and I get it as well. But
Having said that, I did. So I got one bit of material that is what you would call observational, and it was originally written as part of that plane story, where I just go off on an aside and start talking about how your bladder, your pelvic floor, only. Hang on, I need to remember. It's been so long since I've done a gig, I can't even remember my own material.
That's the only thing, and we don't realise how long it's been. Like, I don't know if you feel the same. It doesn't feel as long as it has been this year. Even though we've been locked down most of it.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I think the bit is you only realize you realize that your bladder doesn't know the difference between. Sorry, hang on. I'm going to start again. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this bit.
I believe in you, sir.
It's only after a long car journey, a long train journey, or a long bus journey that your bladder / pelvic floor realizes that you realize that your pelvic floor doesn't know the difference between being inside your bathroom at your toilet and simply seeing the front of your house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because when you get home and when you see your front door, your pelvic floor releases and it thinks, now we go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
That originally started out as an aside to that whole thing about being on a plane with gastroenteritis. and I've sort of since like surgically removed it, and it's like pure observational stuff. And I really love having it in my arsenal because it's like a fun thing to have. If you're doing something weird and people aren't liking it, you can just chuck in that bit. You know what I mean? It's like a nice little safety valve you can release every now and then.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean, man. It's like holding back like that bit of material that you know you've got there.
Yeah.
It's one of them things that you can't have until you've been doing it for a while, and it.
Oh yeah.
Like, I can't imagine how. I don't know about you, but one issue I've always had is like just remembering the set and stuff. It's got easier as I've gone forward now, and it's got in more, and I've done a few techniques to try and remember it, and it's getting there a little bit. But I can't imagine how people that go for like 60 minute sets do it. I can't imagine that.
It's insane. I mean, I use mind palaces. That's quite a useful way of doing it, where you put items in each room. But at the same time,
I saw that Sherlock Holmes recently.
Yeah. That's why I got it. It's just like you go through your room in your house, and I can still sort of remember mind palaces I had from my first gig, like weird abstract things like, oh, there was a bar and there was 3 fish in it, and there was a condom at the end, and then there was a light switch. And I can't even remember what the jokes were, but I sort of have this powerful memory of this bizarre room I constructed to knit together 4 jokes. It's so weird.
Okay. That's an interesting concept, yeah.
But once you get into the rhythm of a gig, like if you're really in the zone, that's when it becomes dangerous. Like the gig I did last month, I had a mind palace for it, but when I came off stage, I realized, oh shit, I missed like 3 or 4 good jokes there because it was going well, actually, and it would have gone even better had I remembered them. But it's a different. This goes back to the problem of not gigging in 7 months. It's like you're out of practice. If I was gigging regularly, maybe those jokes would have just come to me like that. But it's very, even professional comedy. I've heard Richard Herring say he doesn't feel, if he has several months off, it's like he can't do stand up at all. He just gets on stage, and it's like not going to the gym for 6 months. The muscle that you need to do that exercise, to do that gig, it's not been flexed enough. And it's the nerves coming back as well. I've heard a lot of them say too. Yeah,
it's quite nice to know that people that have been doing it for a while still get those nerves.
Absolutely. The comedian John Robbins, who won the Perrier a few years ago, I remember like 2 days before that gig, I was getting really nervous about my first gig in 7 months, and I heard him on the radio say, "I'm doing my first gig this year." And he says it's like doing his first gig again. And I thought, God, if he feels that way, that makes me feel a lot easier. Makes me feel a lot happier about what I'm about to do.
Who, because I've heard you mention a few names that, in all honesty, I don't actually know. I recognise slightly the one name, Stuart Lee, I think you said. Yeah. Who are your comedy influences then? If you had to pinpoint them down.
I am actually, to be honest, very much a sort of like British, like emotional storytellers guy. So John Robbins' show that he did in 2016, his show was about him breaking up with his girlfriend, but it was also about how that sort of triggered a spiral of like depression and self-loathing, which makes it sound not funny, but it was really hilarious the way he did it. And I just
I've seen Afterlife. I understand it can be funny.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I love people. It's like we were talking about with family stuff. Taking something really emotionally dark, but making it silly and funny is like comedy gold as far as I'm concerned. Really like Daniel Kitson. I really like Russell Kane, whose output in the last few years hasn't been great, but his show Smoke Screens and Castles is...
I'm going to have a look at him because, it's not who I thought it was. I was thinking of... Who was I thinking of?
Russell Howard, maybe?
No. Russell Watson? Is he the Indian dude?
Oh, maybe.
No, he's not, is he? I can't think of his name, but Russell something. But yeah, I don't know who you mean.
Anyway, I basically like male comedians who talk about their emotions. I mean, obviously, I love some female comics as well, but I think just because I'm a guy, I just tend to gravitate more towards that point of view.
Well, yeah, this is the thing. People like to make out that's a bad thing when you don't like mention, like, because apparently diversity nowadays means that you have to include certain numbers of certain people in each bunch. It's like if you have to do that and you're doing it out of necessity, that's not real diversity in my eyes. It should be, it's just open and everyone's in the same group,
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think. I the way I view it is, if half the country are women, but you're having comedy lineups that have got no women on, it just feel like there is something wrong there. So I don't
Oh,
think.
yeah.
I don't
Okay,
think.
yeah.
I don't think it's like tokenism to include women on these lineups, or even.
I kind of went more to race then, to be fair, without even
Sure,
meaning
yeah.
to. Yeah.
But I don't know. I was just coming at it from more of a like personal point of view, which is.
Yeah.
But this is why you need diversity, because as a male comedian, I'm very well served. As a white male comedian, I'm very well served in terms of cultural output of things that are there primarily for me to enjoy. And that's why you do need a bit more diversity in the comedy scene, because people might not be hearing voices that they recognize. And I love a lot of those comedians, but it's just
with the male ones.
Because I'm a white male comedian, my favorite comedians are all white male comedians, because that's what I relate to.
Yeah, which just makes perfect sense. I mean, that's just a fair thing. Anyone that says like you have to like certain ones, it's completely fair. But I mean, it's not a lie to say that there's less women in comedy. You know, it's just a statistic. There are less women in comedy.
Yeah, but is that because the barriers are close to them entering, or do you reckon it's because they're less interested in comedy?
I mean, the only people that can answer it are them, like the people that don't want to do comedy. I guess for some reason, it's just women are just less interested in comedy. It turns out that way anyway.
I don't know. I mean, I'd be surprised if that was true. I do sometimes wonder because film directing, going back to movies, film directing, that's a thing where women have been historically underrepresented. And again, is it just that men are more into the power trip of having a megaphone and standing in front of 100 people and yelling at them and telling them what to do?
Which makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be the case that like more men are interested in that role. Having said that,
I can see we've evolved that way. Yeah.
Having said that, I don't. There was a point where like only 4% of directors were women. That just seems like it's way too much the other way. Do you know what I mean? What's the correct number it should be? Is it 30%? Is it 40%? Is it 50%? I don't know. But when it's 4%, it's wrong. And when it's
exactly,
10 comedians on a lineup and they're all men, that's wrong as well.
No, you're right, to be fair, when you put it in that sense as well, which is obviously true, but I mean, I can imagine, especially with a film company and with directors, like you said, I could imagine that the old-timey kind of feeling of them just preferring male directors. I wouldn't be as surprised if that still, goes on in Hollywood and all that. Not so much in comedy, because comedy is way too varied for that to be a thing now. Comedy is way too big of a thing, and it's it's too separate. It's not one thing.
Maybe, I don't know. We'll have to. I mean, I don't think as a male comedian who's only been doing it 2 years, I'm probably not hugely qualified to talk about it. I'm sure there's people who've got a much more informed perspective on it. Again, John Robbins, the comedian that I mentioned earlier, on his podcast, they does with another comedian called Ellis James. They've both dated high-profile female comedians that had long-term relationships, and they often talk about how it has given them an insight into the sort of horrors women have to face in terms of barriers to entry and what's kind of expected of them. One thing I will say is, like,
I can imagine there's a whole different waft of barriers and different things they have to meet.
One thing
being a woman in general as well.
One thing I will say that I feel fairly confident on is that I think one of the problems with comedy that women face, because a lot of women talk about sexual harassment, horror stories you have in the comedy industry,
which is what I'm about to say. Where my mind went,
what I'm about to say is not meant to excuse that, but because comedy is in bars, it's in pubs, it's in clubs. I think a lot of comedians and club owners will probably forget that it's supposed to be a professional environment, and that basically two comedians and an MC and a promoter are effectively in their office when you're at a gig, but because you're in the same environment that you would usually socialize and get drunk in and make sexual advances in, I think people do forget themselves. Again, that's not an excuse. I just think it's maybe part of the mindset of why so many men do behave ill towards women in these circumstances.
It's more about like the bars and that in general. Just like there should be more of a understanding in general in society and in these places that, you know, like that kind of stuff. Not
like,
sexual advances, because sexual advances aren't a bad thing. People kind of make sexual advances out to be a no. I know you weren't, but people kind of made that out. But yeah, like the unwanted ones, obviously, you just need like some security there and stuff, which would be good.
In your office, they were serving pints on tap, and you were drinking a couple of pints every couple of hours, and you know they were serving nuts and crisps, and there was some music blaring, bangers, classic bangers.
And your boss was doing it as well.
Yeah, exactly. But this was in your office, and there was attractive women around. At some point, you might start cracking onto your colleagues in an ill-advised way. That's essentially
I've worked in an office. I've been in a Christmas party. I've had a fun night. I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, Christmas parties, I mean, that's a whole other thing. I think because everyone has been bottling up all that sexual tension for 12 months, and then suddenly it all gets released at the Christmas party, and everyone's banging, everyone's finger blasting, and then the office.
Everyone's allowed to give in to indulgences on Christmas, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, with that, I'm not going to say anything else in case I get in trouble.
Well, maybe we will. Although, actually, I should go. You raise an interesting thing there. One thing I'm trying to do on my podcast is, I mean, I think I'm fairly woke, although I say that hesitantly because I think the word is used in different ways by either proponents of it or critics.
Yeah.
So I think it sort of lost its original meaning, which actually, to be fair, the original meaning, which is to do with Black American consciousness, wouldn't apply to me anyway. I think I'd like to think I'm fairly woke, but
I think this kind of thing is true with most things. Most things have lost their original meaning.
Yeah, exactly.
When most things go through that. Okay,
but I think, even though I think I'm fairly woke, I also think there's more room to talk about subjects in an irreverent way than is perhaps been given credit for by some woke people. And I'm not saying that as a criticism of them. I just think you don't always have to tread on eggshells if you're confident about the point you're trying to convey.
Yeah.
Last week on my podcast, I was talking about Black Panther, and I accidentally said, "Oh, Black Panther, the first big black superhero," and then I immediately thought to myself, that doesn't sound like the most politically correct thing. But because I was fully aware that I just accidentally misphrased saying he was the first black superhero.
You mean like mainstream. You mean the mainstream black superhero. I know what you meant, yeah.
I just left it in the edit because I thought that's like a slightly irreverent way of putting it. But most people, I think, would either be surprised by it, but also understand what I thought I was trying to say. So I
get what you meant.
There's room to be irreverent on these things without necessarily always worrying that you've insulted everyone by doing so. That's my thing.
No, I always like to think like that. I try to unedit my podcast as much as possible and try to take as little out, unless like the person I'm interviewing, that I'm talking with, not in the interview, wants something in particular taken out that I didn't say, which would surprise you. The things that comedians want taken out, it's not at all the stuff you would think.
What do they want taking out?
Comes down to politics and stuff a lot of the time, not out of boredom, just out of their opinion on it or their understanding or lack of understanding of it.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. On my podcast, I'm trying not to. I don't know. I'm trying not to make it too much what my opinions are, and I'm trying to make it more about as I said earlier, using it as a springboard to just talk about things that just to be funny, to be irreverent, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Because I'm a bit paranoid. Isn't everyone's podcast just them saying their opinions? But having said that, I've become a bit concerned lately. Maybe people do want you to say your opinions. Otherwise, if you're not, maybe you're not putting enough of your own personality into it. One thing I've noticed,
you can do both though.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed with young comedians, I don't know how old you are, but young 20-something comedians who seem to be absolutely smashing social media. They're really wearing their personality on their sleeves. Do you know what I mean? Just
yeah,
uploading stories of themselves, reels of themselves, silly videos of themselves on TikTok, and it's not me. I think I'm like a 35-year-old Twitter user who's not quite got the hang of like just putting your personality out there constantly.
I understand what you mean completely. Like, I'm 29, so I'm kind of in the middle, I guess, of the two generations. So I like to think I'm very open and very myself, like on social media and stuff. I like to just not think about what I'm putting up, just be myself, you know, say something stupid generally, go on a random tangent. But I have to kind of force myself to keep doing it. I don't like to keep posting stuff. It's not natural to me to keep doing it day after day. Unless it's work stuff, like I've been making a lot of stuff lately, so I can do it for that, like making videos, making podcasts. I've got like a retro gaming thing at the moment, got like a true crime podcast, got the quiz that I do every other Wednesday. That kind of stuff I can do, but just being myself.
Maybe I don't know. I think I'm just having an early midlife crisis where I worry.
I feel like I've been through that, yeah.
Even though you're only 29 and you've already had one, yeah.
2 kids, though, you know, like it makes sense that it could happen earlier.
Exactly.
Carry on, sorry.
But I don't know. I worry that because people say, "Oh," and I don't know how true this is. People say when they're looking for new comedians, the industry, they want to see the whole package. They want to see that you're smashing it on social media, that you're smashing it at gigs. And I really hope it's not true because I don't know how to smash it on social media. I see these people uploading 4 stories of themselves a day talking on Instagram, and I can't be asked to do it.
Yeah.
So not in my.
You're on about more like when we were gigging as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One guy I know, he's a nice guy. He's really confident. He's a slick comedian. When he does a gig, there'll be like 15 stories of him on the way to the gig, a video of him doing the gig, a video of 2 other people on the gig making everyone laugh, a video of him on the tube home going, "Oh, well, that gig went quite well." Yeah. And I think like it's probably very engaging for his followers to get such an insight into his life. But if I'm on a tube, I want to read a book. That's who I am.
Yeah,
I'm not going to post a video of me, reading a book because I think that would be boring for people.
I completely agree. I don't think it's so much that it'd be boring for people because I think it sounds like me and you are very, very similar. Because when I'm not I'm social once I'm in the situation. I'm very social and enjoy being social, and I'm decent at it, especially in person more than anything. But in general, I prefer to just sit down, like you said, read a book, watch something to myself, get a bit high, chill out. That's my thing. But I think it's probably being a social person makes it easier to do the kind of social media things in the name, Yeah, I don't have that in me either, so I completely agree. I mean,
that's why I do my podcast and I edit clips and splice in movie clips and I put that online because to me that feels like, like I've created a little thing there. And it's sort of close to what those guys I was talking about were doing, but at the same time, those guys, because it's a much more informal, loose way they're doing it, they can pump out so much of it. Whereas with me, it's like if I want to post a 90-second video of myself talking, I feel I've got to put loads of bells and whistles on it to make it work. I've got to put in a tag at the front, splice some video stuff in, put a score on. I literally put a score on. I put classical music on some of this stuff and maybe
that depends, man. You could work on it.
I think I'm not interesting enough. I've got to put Bach playing the piano on my thing for it to be worthwhile to someone. And I wish I had the confidence of some of these young guys to just be like, "Oh, here's me eating my breakfast, thinking about a gig." I almost wish I had the balls to do that, but I don't. I'm like, guys, get me some classical music because people are not going to be interested in A-Dog reading a book on the tube.
You know, one thing I've learned though, from podcasting more than anything, because talking a lot about comedy, so talking to a lot of comedians, everyone is unconfident in their own way.
Yes.
Very much so. So I know what you mean, just putting the bells and whistles on there. I love editing, so I'm a big editor, so I just do it naturally. But I think every comedian's got that little bit of self, we have what would be a good way to explain it? We're like a Cadbury's cream egg in the sense but with a really small center. Whatever chocolate has a really small center. So we've got a lot of the chocolate, which is self-doubt, and then right in the middle, there's this tiny little nugget.
Cream of confidence.
Yeah, this cream of an absolute self-confidence that is undying, just undying, and is just there.
I did a gig recently where I went really well. Well, it was the gig I talked about. It went really well, and I was really going out of my way because the room was a bit
one
awkward.
just before the second lockdown.
Yeah. The room was a little bit awkward. It was like a new night. It was a working class club kind of thing. It was not a crowd that we're used to seeing live comedy, and they were a bit chatty and unruly. It wasn't the worst crowd ever, but they were a little bit heckly and a little bit chatty. So when I went on stage, I made a real effort to like be big, be loud, go to the parts of the room that were being unruly, chat to them, incorporate them into my set. It was quite a lot of effort. And I remember when I came off stage, my friend who was watching said, like, I wish you were like more like that all the time. I just thought, that would be so tiring if I was constantly trying to manage the room. It would be absolutely exhausting.
Because it is like you're putting on a performance, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I like to think like I am being me, but I'm being like a more exaggerated, focused version of me. That's how I like to think about it.
Yeah, like I love wrestling, and I think about it like I do with wrestling. They say with like your wrestling, the best kind of wrestling gimmicks are your own personality turned up to 11.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the same with comedy. I always wanted to be a wrestler, and I thought like as I got older, like this wasn't any reason why I became a comedian, but I suddenly realized at one point, it's like, hold on, I am kind of now a wrestler, just a wrestler without the potentially breaking their neck. I'm still doing the promos, chatting poof, just without the breaking my neck part.
But you do walk on stage at the beginning of every gig and say, "Can you smell what KD is cooking?"
I have to do it. And then I fart.
And for the record, I used a 25-year-old out-of-date wrestling reference there because that's the last time I watched wrestling was 25 years ago.
That's not 25 years ago. Don't age yourself that much, sir.
Oh, well, 20 years ago then. 20 years ago. I was exaggerating the comic effect.
Yeah. I'd say about 15 years ago, to be fair.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Although he did come back.
I remember one thing my dad said. He was watching The Rock do wrestling, and my dad said, that guy's going to be a yeah, he said, my dad said, that guy's going to be a really famous actor. And I went, and I was like a pretentious cinemaphile, even at 15. And I was like, why? Yeah. And he went, look at him. Just look at him. It's just acting. It's just pure charisma. And he was totally right. He's like the most bankable star on the planet now.
No, he completely called it in that case. It's crazy, isn't it? How he's became like arguably the biggest. Would you say the biggest actor in the world?
I think by money, he's consistently the top money makers, and I'm pretty sure a couple of the last years he has been the highest grossing guy because he's in the Fast and Furious films, which are massive, and he's just had the odd other film now, which is like Jumanji. Both Jumanji films were massive. So just by pure money making, he is the biggest star on the planet currently standing.
Yeah.
And this is an age where it's less about, because back in the 90s, you had actors like Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, Meg Ryan, Will Smith, who they were the draw. But that's not true anymore. The draw is the franchise. That's the big thing. But The Rock does stand slightly apart as being someone who seems to have enough charisma and star power to open a film.
Yeah. You do have some which are basically looked at as like franchise, not starters, but arguably franchise starters as well, though, because even The Rock, you could argue that, basically it is, like from the Fast 5 onwards, it's a whole different kind of film.
Oh, yeah. I only started watching those films once he showed up in them.
Yeah. I think that was Fast 5, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, that was the first one with The Rock.
Yeah. But, they all focus now. And you get a few people that, so there's The Rock. I mean, just looking at the highest grosser, I was looking at the highest grosser in 2019. And The Rock was tough. Chris Hemsworth. He's another one. Robert Downey Jr. Chris Evans down the bottom. Adam Sandler used to be one of them. But he's I still like Adam Sandler, but he's obviously gone way down now.
But he has a deal with Netflix, so it's hard to chart how big his films are now. Apparently, they are big like hits for Netflix. But one thing that I slightly miss is with theatrical box office, you can really quantify what is successful culturally, because you can literally say, what was the highest grossing films of 1984? And it's like, right, it was Beverly Hills Cop, it was Ghostbusters, it was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Now, in streaming, it's harder to quantify because a lot of those streaming giants like Amazon Prime and Netflix, they're really cagey and selective about what they release ratings wise. And I think it's a bit of a problem. I can bring this back to comedy. Like, how are you supposed to know what your commercial worth is as an artist if people aren't releasing the figures? So, like, take James Acaster, for example. We know he's pretty big, but you know, if he could actively say my Netflix special got 2 million views on opening weekend, that could increase, say, his asking price for gigs. Do you know what I mean? But I don't think he can do that because he can't point to anything because it's secret. It's like in a file at Netflix HQ. And I think I don't think that's good. I think people should know what their commercial worth is.
Yeah. I mean, they get like, in regards to films, you do like test screenings and stuff. So that would kind of like act as that. And with comedy, I get what you mean, but you kind of get like, you build up your set anyway, don't you? So you've kind of gone through all that before you get to doing your
No, but I'm not talking about artistic worth. I'm talking about your commercial worth. So like Chris Hemsworth, Adam Sandler. I'll go back to Adam Sandler. Like, presumably here's what I mean. Presumably Adam Sandler is like a big draw for Netflix, right? They know if he's getting the viewers or not. They know if
that would be
they know if Movie Halloween gets 1 million or 10 million viewers, but he might not know that. And how's he supposed to know what his leverage is? That's what I mean. So James Acaster, if he wants to say he wants to play Netflix off Amazon Prime, how is he supposed to do it? How does he know what his net worth is? How did Amazon know how many viewers his Netflix special got? That's my point. Whereas in the 90s,
and you've got to compare it to how many people are subscribed as well. Exactly. Which I can imagine they probably don't give out those numbers too.
Exactly. And whereas like in the 90s, Eddie Izzard could just basically say, well, I sold 1 million DVD copies of Glorious, and therefore that's his work. He can, that prices him effectively. I just think, it's very difficult to gauge, I think.
I mean, the only way, I guess, I suppose the way you could class it would be if they said like however many downloads / streams or something, but that would still include everyone putting their, their amounts together, and that's not going to happen with these kind of companies.
That's the thing, but Netflix know that figure, but Acaster doesn't. That's the issue.
Yeah. I could imagine them telling. Well, I could definitely imagine them telling them if they're going badly. You know what I mean?
Well, I suppose if they don't rehire you, presumably because Dave Chappelle keeps having specials released, they must be big hits. Whereas,
I saw recently that he got something removed again.
Yeah, it turned out that Netflix had the rights to his old Chappelle show, but he wasn't making any money from it. They just sort of acquired it, and he wasn't happy. So he said, "Can you take that down?" And they said, "Yeah." And that's presumably because they value their relationship with him because he's a big draw.
Yeah.
Whereas
that's fair enough, though, really. If you're not going to make any money off it, then yeah, fair enough.
But then that's about he has star power. Someone pointed out that Michaela Cole took her TV show I May Destroy You to the BBC because Netflix wouldn't let her have like a tiny percentage of the control rights to it. So she just went to the BBC. But again, that's because she's nowhere near as famous as Chappelle. So
you can't compare
exert that control over them. Maybe one day she will. Who knows?
I swear there was I can't remember who it was. Like we was talking about some of like the equal stuff, with men and women, for example, and actors and with actors and that. I can't remember who it was. I think it was, I don't know, but someone was talking about there was a top earning, like a high end actor, and one of the supporting actors, whatever. And she was saying that she felt she should have got paid the same amount as him because of equal pay, men and women, equal pay and all that, which obviously for most jobs that makes sense. But the thing is they're missing here, which the interviewer, the podcaster at the time brought up, is that they're not the same thing. Like, one of them, ignoring the fact that one's a support and one's like the main act, like it's all about how big they are, which is exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, it's gonna be tricky. This. So a good example of this is Claire Foy played the Queen in The Crown, who is the main character in The Crown.
Yeah.
Matt Smith, who was playing her husband, got paid loads more. But the thing is, at the time, I actually have some sympathy for Netflix here, because at the time, Matt Smith was the bigger star because he was Doctor Who. So
it makes sense. So I remember this, yeah.
Yeah, so I actually think, yeah, I mean, there was a more egregious example, I think, where Jennifer Lawrence got paid lots less than her co-leads in American Hustle, the film with Christian Bale, and that seems a bit more egregious because it's like, well, she's in the Hunger Games, that's as big as Batman. So I think there is an issue with it in terms of whether they get paid. But I know what you mean. Sometimes it's not necessarily a sexist thing. It's just simply Matt Smith's more famous, so he gets paid more.
And I suppose when it comes down to it as well, it's more to do with like their agents or whatever, isn't it, with the acting stuff?
Exactly. And if I can make a potentially controversial statement,
celebrities do love making their controversial statements. So.
Well, no, it is documented that women tend to make more logical decisions in terms of pay demand, whereas men tend to just be more fucking ballsy. So men tend to be a bit more like, I'm just going to ask for 10k more than the asking price here. So then when they meet them halfway, they get more. Whereas women are a bit more like, I'll add a couple of thousand on because that makes sense. And so just let me finish my point. Some of that pay gap is because of that. Not all of it. Some of it probably is to do with the difficult decisions women have to make in terms of choosing to raise kids or have parents. But I do think in some cases, like I often say to female friends and to my wife, like, just ask for more, and all they can do is say no. And best case scenario, you might be getting a bit more money out of it.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but it's just like that wasn't a generalization, sorry, but it's just one of the things. And a lot of people are different in that, but some generalizations are there because they're kind of true. Like, they have some root in. Yeah, it's kind of true.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, again, I'm not an expert on this. I have read that like that kind of is a thing about men's. I had a mate who used to do it. He was like 25, and every time he went for a job interview, he'd pretty much just add 5 or 6k on. And he would say to me, he would sometimes get laughed out of the room because they'd be like, "Why are you barely out of uni? Why are you doing these jobs for 6 months and then going to interviews and asking for this extortionate money?" But the fact is, he was earning way more than anyone I knew by the age of 30. And it's because of this ballsy, go into the interview room and put your dick on the table attitude he had to a salary negotiation.
I used to work like in a proper office. Like I hated working in an office. Like it's soul draining. Like it's purely soul draining, and a call center and financial difficulties and all credit and all that kind of stuff. But I had someone that I knew that worked there too, and he applied for a job higher up, and he was in no way qualified for it, not at all. But he had the interview in that, and he just blagged it the whole way through. Do you know who Paul Heyman is?
No.
Oh, he's like a wrestling manager person, but he's a really smug person. Like imagine like Ricky Gervais, really smug when he wants to be, And he said he was just doing that for the whole interview. And then at the end, they were like, "Do you have any questions?" And he was like, "Yeah, when do I start?" Like, as cliche as it sounds, but
it's the ballsiness, and it could go one of two ways. It could be like,
it worked.
What a dick, or they could be like, I love it. This guy's got kuchbar, whatever the word is.
It worked, man. Yeah, it worked though. It got him like a good paying job.
Yeah, no, fair play to him.
Yeah.
I've always thought, I think I'm one of those people that's better at interviews than I am at doing jobs.
Yeah, I agree. Same.
I got promoted really quickly in my last job and into like a managerial role. And I never thought I was one of the best people at doing that job. But I just think I'm just one of those guys that's quite good at confidently expressing myself in an interview scenario. For some reason, it doesn't make me nervous. I quite enjoy the challenge of it.
It's some of the I appreciate that as well. it's quite similar too. It's something that kind of transitions well into comedy. I never really thought about it before until you said it, but until you were saying that then. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because we are literally, and in the interview, you're talking yourself up, you're showing off a little bit.
Yeah.
On stage, we're doing the exact same thing, just turned up a bit more.
One thing that I'm trying to work on is, for some reason, so I emceed a gig in London for 18 months before I came up here. And I found it really hard to get out of my own head when I emceed in a way that I didn't when I was doing my own stuff. And I think it's because I put this pressure on myself to be like, oh, the MC has to be witty. They have to have good comebacks.
Yeah. So how in your head do you mean then?
I just mean, I think I just needed to let go and enjoy the conversation with the audience as if it was a normal conversation. And then if something funny came out of that, fine. Whereas I was being a bit like literally thinking, what's a funny thing I could say here? Not good. Like, I've never thought that in this conversation with you. I've just tried to have a natural chat. And I think
forgetting that it's just sometimes just talking, and then you're just kind of funny as you say it, you know.
Exactly. We had we were quite lucky in that we got some fairly big names to come down to that gig. And I remember once, have you ever seen the comedian Abandon Man?
No, but it sounds familiar.
Abandon Man is an Irish rapper who basically improvises rap when he performs. But it's worth pointing out, this guy is not
him already.
Yeah, this guy is not some like shit 80s rapper who's like, I was walking down the street looking at my feet. And the guy has really modern, fast, like slick flow. Yeah. And he does just mad stuff. Like, he'll get everyone to hold something up from their pocket and he'll go around the room rapping about all the items that are up. He's absolutely amazing. The way his mind works so fast is insane. And before he was in Edinburgh preview, and I was like, oh, I'll introduce you. And he was just like, he's very cool the way he talks. He was like, yeah, man, just you get up there and you do your thing, you work your magic. I just really felt like I really wanted to just like burst out crying and be like, hey, I have no magic. I'm not you, for God's sake. And that's what I mean when I say I'm in my own head when I MC. I really struggle to just lock into a natural flow. Yeah. And I'm hoping actually having 7 months to a year off might reset like a lot of my own sort of bad habits in a weird way. Like that gig I did a few months ago last month went quite well because I actually went into it. I sort of let go of my hang-ups and I was really like, just go on that stage, Aidan. And if there's awkward people in the room, just go and deal with them. Talk to them directly, incorporate them into the set. And it wasn't the best gig I've ever done, but it went well for that reason. And sometimes actually having a lot of time off can be good because it can allow you to break out of your old habits.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking of. I've been hoping the same kind of thing. I feel like me and you are very much at the same kind of point from everything we've been talking about, which is cool.
You said you've been going a couple of years. I've only been going 2 years myself.
Oh, yeah. And everything you're saying more than anything, though, like, you know, I was trying to focus more on MCing because everyone says that MCing is something that just helps you a lot as a comedian anyway, because you build up the naturalness, you know, like you were saying, being able to work with the crowd and all that. But yeah, you just get in your own head, and just in general, it's a really good thing to try and get away from. It's just letting go, not thinking about it all. But it's just not easy to do. You have to like constantly remind yourself, don't you?
Yeah, and exactly. And going back to what we're saying about, it's always refreshing when you see a more experienced, better comedian than you having the same issue. There's a guy in the circuit who's really slick, and I remember he came off stage at Angel Comedy. It was his first time emceeing Angel Comedy, and he said, "Oh, I got to get out my own head, but I just keep having the words Angel Comedy ring through my head." Like he couldn't believe he was emceeing this big night, so therefore he was struggling to just be himself, and it was refreshing. Wow, if that guy's having an issue, I don't have to feel as bad to that. I would go through this fucking nightmare of inner monologue every single time I did an MCing gig, which was annoyingly every single Monday because it was a weekly gig.
Yeah, I was that.
But running your own gig though is great. Like, there's no way I would have got 18 months.
Say that again. Sorry, you cut out a little bit.
We're just saying, like, running your own gigs is quite a good thing to do. Like, there's no way I would have got 18 months of solid emceeing experience from anyone else in London.
Yeah.
Just setting up your own gig, and then I just knew every Monday I'd have either a guaranteed 10-minute slot or a guaranteed emceeing slot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit of work because you've got to promote the night, but I mean, it's probably one of the best things I've done comedically in terms of improving my craft.
I understand completely. That's why this podcast started. Or was the podcast first? I can't remember which was first, but there's the In Your Pub comedy night as well that I used to do. Obviously before everything, which I'm going to do again after the vaccine. Are you planning to carry it back on as well after the vaccine? Because it is really good as well. Like it's nice as well. Same thing with the podcast. You get to meet a lot of comics. You get to be quite active in the scene. So I feel like I've been very active. Going off topic a bit. I feel like I've been very active in the scene during lockdown, probably more so than before, which is not active, but more social, I guess is a better way to put it. Not more social, but maybe as social.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was looking. I think we're breaking up slightly.
Yeah.
Hello. Are you asking if I would? Are you asking if I would start a gig again when I go back after lockdown?
Yeah. Well, are you planning? Yeah. Have you got any plans to start a gig again?
No, I don't think so. I think like because that gig in London that I did was every single week for 18 months. It just absorbed a lot of your time promoting it, doing the social media. So I was actually kind of looking forward to just doing my own thing again. What I might do though is, because we had some big names on at that gig, like Tony Law, Abanderman, John Kearns, I do have a bit of a Rolodex of like talent in my phone. So what I might do is I'd be tempted next summer to do previews of high-profile acts in sort of North Yorkshire. Because if I could get like a big act, a big name to come and do an hour at some like tryout room in London, like preview a show, that might be like a good way of like splitting the difference, doing some MCing, doing something worthwhile.
So what's that actually mean when you say a preview?
Like a preview for an Edinburgh show, like where a comedian will do an hour show of just trying out new material. Like one good thing with the night was we got big names because because some big names kind of just want a quiet room with 30 people in that they can try out some new stuff on without being judged on it. And that way it was just quite it was quite a fun way of meeting top talent and just getting something mutually beneficial out of it. I think some people in London thought I was pro because I would occasionally post a picture of a gig with me and Tony Law, but it wasn't that I was as good as Tony Law. It's just that I somehow convinced Tony Law to come down to my shitty night and do a 20-minute set. Do you know what I mean?
That was the gig that I did just before lockdown. Was my first pro lineup gig.
Oh, nice one, well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it wasn't really much different. Well, no, it felt like. Well, yeah. I felt like I had to make everything tighter and stuff. I was doing like the newbie slot with the 5 minutes on it. I felt like everything had to be tight. So but I forgot I was going to say something. And tell you, what was you saying before that part again?
Oh, I was just talking about my night and doing hour previews and maybe starting a preview night for big names to come up and do stuff. I don't know. I was sort of riffing on the idea of starting a night in Leeds.
Yeah. Oh, is it Leeds then? Like, is that East Midlands? Is it? Am I right in thinking that?
Leeds is North York. It's West Yorkshire.
Yeah, my geography is absolutely terrible, man.
I was going to say, if you don't know where Leeds is, it's basically smack bang in the middle of it's like sort of parallel with Manchester, but in the middle.
Yeah.
Like in between Manchester and Hull.
I remember what I was going to say now. Don't you think it's weird? Like, because we were talking about, and I'm sure from the same bit, I can imagine you probably did the same thing when you decided to get into comedy. You probably you'd listen to a lot of stuff that's like ingest everything comedy, listen to a lot of like podcasts and interviews with comedians and all that kind of stuff. And like we're kind of the first generation of comedians, I imagine, that kind of had to deal with the fact of social media and the fact of I think a lot more of us are in our own heads and worried about what we say just because it's so easy. It doesn't just disappear in the room on that night. It doesn't disappear into that night anymore. It can be recorded, can be put online. You know what I mean? It can come up 20 years later.
I think one interesting thing that's emerging, because I mean, that's something that affects everyone. Everyone has to now live with some, like, I'm so glad I didn't have Twitter when I was 16, because I would definitely have been cancelled by now, because I was saying all sorts of horrendous shit back then. I think in terms of comedy, I think one big thing is if you're really famous, there's no such thing as trying out new material anymore. So like Louis CK, whenever you think of Louis CK, like he did a warm-up show where he was trying out new material last year. Someone recorded the whole thing and put it online. And then he got like ripped apart for certain jokes he was doing. And I just think that's the reason you do those gigs, is you try to figure out, like, I've done jokes where
it's him as well.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I've done shows where it's like, I'm not sure if this joke is irreverent or if it's offensive. Is it walking the line enough or whatever? But you do it live and the audience tells you if you have gone too far.
Yeah.
But you can't do that if you're famous.
Yeah, and most things, like, you know, if it's going to offend someone, or if it could offend someone, sorry, it's there's a word for it and it's escaped me. It depends, you know, different people could be offended by different things, so it's not like the same. It shouldn't be the same for everyone anyway. So I've never fully got that anyway, why everyone would be offended by one thing. But yeah, like you said, it depends on the room. Some rooms are just care a lot less, which is one great thing about if you get the chance to come to the Hollybush after the lockdown, which is kind of the Midlands hub for comedy. But at the same time, it's one of those places that, you know, if you can deal there, you can deal in most places, you know, because you have to work hard.
I like the challenge of that. I think that's where I'm trying to be now. Is one of the problems in London is there's so many bringer open mic gigs where you have to bring a friend to do it. You end up performing to friendly crowds, and I only started to get like green shoots of interest from like professional promoters once I stopped doing open mic gigs, and it was literally about 6 months after that where I'd got more used to only performing to real audiences. That started happening, because you can become too accommodating to audiences that are kind of on your side already. That's why I really got a kick out of that gig the other week at the Working Men's Club, where the crowd were a bit unruly, but I sort of managed to manage them, because it's like, this actually feels like a challenge. There's actually some tension here that you can play with.
What is it you think about doing them when you see, even if they're not unruly or an unruly person, or just a person in general, if you decide I'm going to do some crowd work with these people here, what goes through your head? How do you approach it? Because that's the thing.
I've got to a point
trying to do more.
I've got to a point with my set now where there are natural points from the set to build in audience interaction. So, so like these little things, like I have a joke about sexual performance where I say the shortest amount of time that I've ever lasted in bed is minus 58 minutes. My wife and I joined the Mile High Club while crossing an international time zone. No, sorry, sorry, I think I got that right. Yeah. Minus 58 minutes. We crossed an international time zone. Well, you know. Anyway, but I often preface that in the gig by just going up to someone in the audience, and I try and do it to the person that's being the most of a dick, and just saying, "Hello, sir. Can I ask you a question? Yes. What's the shortest amount of time you've ever lasted in bed?" That could lead to some quite fun audience banter. And then once it's tied itself out, then I can drop a joke that I know usually gets a big laugh. That's what I mean when I say audience interaction. It's like, I know what my out point is, and this conversation starter will tie directly into my joke. So it's just little things like that tend to really help.
Setting up a callback like for later on.
Yeah, exactly. What about you?
Well, that's like the fan interaction is more the point that I'm trying to do more now, because I felt like when you were talking earlier about some people feel like they're reading from a script, you know, that's something I struggled with for a while. I think I was always a lot more natural, like doing this kind of stuff, as more so in person as well, because I did it in like person before when it was before the world died. I'm just more natural with that kind of stuff, but it took me a while to get out my head more than anything on stage and just remind myself that I can be the weird guy on stage. That's the point. I've got to be.
Genuinely, and you know what yeah, and you know what I think? I think the people that make it are funny and they have good jokes, but I really think personality is almost more important than anything.
Yeah,
like the people that really make it tend to have some kind of personality. Like whether you like Michael McIntyre or not, there is a distinct personality there. James Acaster is a very, very distinct personality in the way he expresses himself. Bill Burr, again, whether you like him or not, he's clearly got this sort of masculine sort of viewpoint. And Joe Rogan as well.
I do like Bill Burr.
Yeah, him and Joe Rogan, they've got very clear viewpoints and ways of expressing themselves that are distinct. And, you know, it's worrying because, you know, I'd like to think, oh, it'd be great if you could just write great jokes and be a famous comedian. But I do think you have to have more. And again, it ties into what I'm saying about these young comedians who kill it on social media because they're wearing their personality on their sleeve all the time, and people can connect to that more. They can see the charisma, and they can connect. And,
yeah.
Hopefully, I'm meandering a bit, but I think what I'm saying makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Because it is more of the thing now. It's just become how people digest a lot of. I guess it's how people. It's not how people digest news, but it's like a lot of the fandom comes from there anyway.
Yeah.
People can virtually stalk now, you know. But it's one of them things I don't like doing. I've never enjoyed doing it really. The social media side of it, I like share. I've now got to the point where I like sharing my projects.
Yes.
But bigging up like myself, or just interacting with people on social media, or just living on social media, like you said, some people do. Put everything they do on there, you know. It's just I don't enjoy it. It's not natural to me. People are too fake on social media for me. Everyone's portraying themselves.
Hopefully, we can find a way of charting our way through this comedy industry without necessarily having to post pictures of ourselves eating and pictures of our lunch and all that kind of thing. Anyway, I might have to go shortly because I'm sort of reaching that 2-hour bladder point where I'm going to have to go to the bathroom. But, I've very much enjoyed coming on your podcast. Thanks for inviting me on.
No, thank you very much, man. This is about the right amount of time anyway, and I'm very tired anyway, man. So thank you for putting up with my tired head.
Wait, mate, you've got 2 kids. I'm amazed you stayed up this late.
It's very true. But
you have
thank
2
you very
kids. I'm amazed that you stayed up this late.
No, very true. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now I'll let you know when.
So I think we've got some connection issues, and we're talking over each other now.
Yeah, it is. I can see you doing it. Hopefully you can hear me. But thank you very much for coming on, then, Aidan. Just let us know again. What was the name of your podcast?
So my name is Aidan McCaffery. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as @AidanMcComedy. And that might also be my name on TikTok, which I joined this week. And my podcast is called the Movie News Podanza. It's like Bonanza, but pod. Movie News Podanza. And you can subscribe to that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much any podcast app going, it's available on. So I would very welcome your followers, Kd, to subscribe to it.
I think all my Hinkenbergs should definitely go on and listen to that. I don't think anyone couldn't have Hinkenberg. I've made a point of that. I've noted that down. I'll include it in the description and that then. But thank you very much, then, Aidan. Thank you for coming on. I hope you have a good night, man. Cheers, dude. See you later.
Have a good weekend. Great to speak to you. Nice to meet you.
You too.